Welcome to Alpha Wealth. I'm Mallory Hoff alongside David Wilkinson.
Over the next half hour, we will help empower retirees and explain how to take the complicated process of retirement and simplify it. Alpha Wealth starts now.
Welcome to Alpha Wealth with Tom Fortino. Tom is the president of Chicago's Alpha Wealth Group, a firm focused on helping prepare people for a successful retirement. Tom is also the popular radio and podcast show host of the Alpha Wealth Hour. Now it's time for Alpha Wealth.
And as we begin our show today, the numbers would suggest that we are living longer than ever before. Tom, my question is this: does that mean we should work longer than ever in order to afford retirement?
Well, the short answer is maybe. It depends, right? But we are living longer than ever. And you know, there's this adage out there, especially when it comes to income, the risk isn't dying, the risk is living, okay? So when we talk about longevity risk, and then, you know, we know we're living longer, but on top of that, we're kind of coming into this new age. We've got AI that's going to have all this technology that's going to help. We've got all these new drugs coming out that are doing some incredible things, which is terrific. But again, then how does it impact our retirement plan? So when we talk about maybe being 3 decades, even going into the 4 decades of retirement, is our income going to last? We have to look at, you know, inflation risk. No one's immune to inflation. We've seen since 1990. I think food inflation is up 122%. And so we go down the line of all these risks that we have to deal with. So absolutely, it's something that we have to take into account. This is one of the risks, longevity risk. And so you need to incorporate that into your planning.
Well, then you think about interest rates, you think about market volatility. Do you consider this to be a scary time for retirees?
You know, I think in many cases, it's always a scary time, right? It's almost like you're going into uncharted territory.
Sure.
You know, in most cases, people have worked, you know, I have these conversations, I'm sitting down with someone and I said, well, when did you start working? I started when I was 14. You know, and now you're 16. So you think about it, you've been working 50 years. And now it's all of a sudden, you're going to wake up one morning and you're not going to work that morning, which is a good thing. But then on the other side, you know, these paychecks coming in, I know I have the income coming in, that's stopping. And so that's, I would think for most people, and then we're not even getting into the emotional aspect of it. I don't know how it couldn't be somewhat scary.
Okay, so when it comes to taking the guesswork out of it, I want to spend some time talking about income planning. I think a lot of folks know that their parents spent years in retirement just picking away at a pile of money. For those who really don't know the first thing about generating a stream of income that can't be outlived, what do they need to know?
Well, certainly, especially when we talk about longevity risk, the income piece is the cornerstone. And we talk about how do we, this being the scary moment of retiring, the guesswork, how do we start to minimize or eliminate some of that? Well, we start with the biggest part of that, which is saying, I know I have enough income coming every month for the rest of my life. If I'm married, for the rest of my spouse's life. Think about it. If you could check that box, wow, I mean, you're kind of on your way. Now we can start working on those other, what we call those 5 pillars of your retirement: minimizing taxes, having a great investment plan, protecting assets, and then having that estate and legacy plan in place. But let's get that income piece in place, making the right Social Security decision, you know, making the right pension decision, setting our investments up to create that income without going into principal. Now we're cooking with gas.
Well, I think one of the exciting parts when you're cooking with gas in retirement, it also allows you to spend with confidence, because I don't think anybody wants to retire and just sit on the couch.
Exactly. And you know what? That's so important. We talk about spending with confidence because, you know, we hear those stories about people that put off doing the things they want. There is a mental block, however you want to phrase it. There's been studies that have shown we are less apt to go into our investments and spend when we have an income coming in. So, you know, again, we talk about that consistent income coming in. Guess what? That mental block goes down, and now we do the things we want to do. We go on the trips. We gift to our grandchildren. We maybe have, you know, a nice meal 2 times a week instead of maybe, we're going to go out and we're going to cook at home. It just, it changes your lifestyle completely. It is dramatic. And again, a lot of studies have shown that it makes a big difference with that, being able to spending with confidence.
Do people always realize what they'll be spending in retirement?
You know, Mallory, there's a lot of studies that have been done that we talk about. Sometimes they just guess. And so getting back to this whole concept of getting rid of the guesswork, kind of reducing the stress or the scarcity of retiring. You know, I'm a big fan of financial organization, which also means really sitting down and doing a budget worksheet.
Yeah.
because you are going to, when you do that, you know, I've quoted employee benefit research before, close to 50% simply guess at what they need in retirement. That's a problem because once you get there, you know, you can't, there's no turning back. You can't change what the past history. So it's really important to put pencil to paper, whether it's looking at what your assets consist of, but it's also, number one, what is my income goal?
Yeah.
You have the numbers in front of you. You know what you're living on now. You can get close to it. But when you start putting pencil to paper, you may be shocked in either a good way or a bad way, but you're going to know the numbers, and then you can start planning to get to that goal.
Have you seen people, when they put pencil to paper, realize that they have enough saved and they can eliminate that B word in retirement, budget? They don't have to actually worry about a budget.
Well, certainly, you know, when we go through, once they have those numbers, yeah, that happens. It has happened before. And then what we do is, here's what's important in that part of it, Dave. Once they have the number, what we do is we show and we prove and we test their plan to say, you know what, you can do it. And you know what's interesting, when we're in those meetings and I'm going through all of this and showing them how to get to that number, just the relief you see, and then one spouse turns to the other spouse and says, see, maybe I can retire a year earlier. And sometimes that does happen. It's kind of funny. It's really kind of rewarding for me because they've done all the hard work, but then to prove out and validate it, that's really what it's all about.
Absolutely wonderful insight and guidance to start our show today.
Sure.
And with that in mind, the time to act is now.
Indeed, great information. And because of that, today, Tom has a great offer for you. Right now, for the first 5 callers with a portfolio of $500,000 or greater, he's offering a complimentary retirement plan just for you. This will allow Tom and his team to sit down with you personally and provide you with a roadmap, analyzing where you are right now, and then discuss your best steps to really get ready for a successful retirement. The number to call is 630-491-8558. Once again, that phone number, 630-491-8558. The stock market, always a hot topic, especially for retirees. Tom, for the retiree that is being told they need to ramp up risk during retirement, what would you say to that?
Well, that can be pretty bad advice, actually, because that's one of the risks. We've talked about these risks going into retirement. One certainly is market risk, right? Because nobody, not myself, there's no one that knows what the market's going to do over the course of the next 10 years. You know, we talk about the lost decade from 2000 to 2010. Not suggesting that's going to happen, but we don't know when those down years are going to happen. And so, you know, when we're going into retirement, we call it sequence of returns risk. I don't want to get into the weeds, but the bottom line is if the market's down and you're pulling money out, that compounding, you know, can be very tough to recover. So that can be some of the worst advice that you can give. I've seen lower volatility portfolios will actually last longer statistically than the higher risk ones because of the volatility. So you need to be aware of that.
Tom, you've been doing this for a long time. Do you feel like people have amnesia in terms of what a big loss looks like when you are approaching retirement or in retirement?
We can call that, yes, we can call it amnesia. Sometimes people call it recency bias.
Yeah.
There's been all these studies that have been done. We do have a short-term memory.
Yeah.
And a lot of times people, the market's doing really well and they're like, this is the time to retire. And sometimes it might not be the best time to retire. So again, you just have to understand what your portfolio or what your investments, how that fits into the overall portfolio. Now, you know, we talk about income planning. That's part and parcel to this whole planning. But if you're relying on your investments for part of your income, you even have to be more careful as how you structure your portfolio.
I think it's also about working with the right team at this stage. And speaking from personal experience and having loved ones that have retired, you hear about the conversations they're having with certain advisors, and maybe they're working with someone, and I'm not going to call anybody out by name, but a big box firm where it's been about investments, and then your parents are in their 70s and they're still being told, invest, 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 and there hasn't really been this shift. What do you say to someone that's being told by their advisor, well, you just need to hang in there, or hey, we're doing great, you don't need to really adjust anything, we're going to keep going the stock and bond route?
Well, that's not really an answer. I always say when you get these answers, when you ask questions and you just hang it, that's not really an answer. I need an answer. Tell me why. Explain to me how this is going to work. And so, you know, with the investments, that's kind of, I guess I don't want to say it's tunnel vision to a certain extent because I'm not looking at these other things. Again, it's not a disparaging remark about any of these. That's just not what they do.
Yeah.
They're not going to look at the taxes. They're not going to look at the income strategies, typically. Again, not that they're not good people. They're just not what they do. Their whole goal is invest, invest, invest. Let's, you know, not looking at the big picture. And a lot of times that can be pretty detrimental down the road, especially when we're in retirement, right?
So if you're getting that answer from the team you've been working with for a long time, hang in there. How do you push back? What's the polite way to kind of push them on that answer and continue the conversation?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily tell someone to push them on it. I mean, you can say,
Yeah.
hey, I need more information, but then I would maybe talk to some other people, right?
That's the direction I was going.
That's really the answer, to say, hey, maybe I should get a second pair of eyes, maybe get a second opinion. You know, there's no shame in talking to other people and getting some information. I try as much as possible to stay away from opinion and stick to fact. If I'm going to give you my opinion, I'm going to preface it with, by the way, this is my opinion. But when I go and stick with facts, now it allows you to make the decisions based on the facts, right? And if I can talk about, here's how the market performs, here's what you have to look at, here's what's going on in your portfolio, here's where you stand from an income standpoint, here's things that we can do. Now it's facts, it's not my opinion. And now, you know, you can, again, make the right decisions, I think.
You've preached about having a customized approach to retirement. I am curious, so nobody really wants to avoid growth. I mean, you still need growth, and we've talked about it, especially keep up with inflation.
No question.
But how can protection and growth actually coexist inside of a retirement plan?
Well, they can coexist, right? In fact, that's what we call a balanced portfolio, right? If you're getting some growth, that's important because we want to keep up with inflation. And historically, that's where it's been. The market, the stock market is a great place to have part of your portfolio. But we also want to understand, you know, you want to have a certain level of protection. There's a couple benefits to that. Number one, again, it's a kind of this volatility buffer. And so when I'm drawing money out over my lifetime, guess what? It's not having as extreme movements on those investments. And then emotionally, too, I'm more apt to stick with my investments. We've seen the average investor underperforms. Why? Because they make emotional decisions, because they have too much volatility. I mean, it's easy to say, but you're not going to eliminate emotions, because when you're down 20%, and we've seen that, you know, over the past few years, you just see it. It's going to happen. How are you going to react? Now, might people say, well, I'm going to be okay, but then when it happens and we're in the moment, things change.
Absolutely. That fear of missing out, that can cost us.
Yes.
Tom, thank you. For you at home, if you want to learn more about having a protected growth strategy for your retirement, Tom has a great offer for you. Right now, for the first 5 callers with a portfolio of $500,000 or greater, he's offering a complimentary retirement plan just for you. This will allow Tom to sit down with you personally and provide you with a roadmap analyzing where you are right now and discuss your best steps to really get ready for a successful retirement. The number to call right now, 630-491-8558. Once again, that number, 630-491-8558. And as we continue our conversation now, taxes could be your largest expense in retirement. Tom, why are they so frequently overlooked in the big picture planning process?
Well, there's a couple reasons. One reason is we all know they're complicated. This is no earth-shattering newsflash. I mean, it's almost laughable when you start to read the IRS code. You can fill a football stadium up with the code. So that's one issue. The other issue, of course, you need to be working with the right people who look at it. Look, our firm, that's integral to what we do. But, you know, we do portfolio management, we do retirement planning, income planning, and so on. But if you're not looking at taxes, this is, again, my opinion, but I don't know how you can be doing all the other stuff. In other words, you can't talk about investments, you can't talk about without talking about taxes. You can't talk about Social Security without talking about taxes, or income without talking about taxes. And then, of course, taxes on your estate planning, right? They unfortunately, they infest a lot of things. I call that, you know, infestation of taxes. We have to stop giving away 20 or 30%. But the point is, these are some of the reasons I think they're overlooked, or people just don't understand them and they're not giving you the advice. You know, you should be working with someone that's going to help you with some of these things. Again, I think it's integral. You know, we have an adage at the Alpha Wealth Group, I want to try to get you as close to tax-free as possible.
Yeah. Sign me up for that right there. And it goes back to the conversation we were having before. How do you embrace that conversation with your advisor, engage in that, and maybe not push back, but ask that. So I am curious, what's the difference between tax prep and tax planning when it comes to someone getting ready for retirement?
Well, that is the whole difference. Tax planning and tax preparation. Tax preparation is what we do April 15th or prior to April 15th. We get it done, we fill it out, we're done, and it's like, I'm done, I'm not looking at it for another year.
Right.
You know, tax planning has to be year-round, right? Whether we're doing Roth conversions, or we're doing 401k Roth contributions, or we're doing an IRA Roth contribution, health savings accounts. Every one of those things I just mentioned, 4 of them are all tax-free. And you know what? You can do all 4 of them. They're independent of each other. So when we talk about getting to tax-free, These are things we should be doing every year. It should almost be habit. And I believe once you start doing these things, it just becomes, you're doing it systematically, and it's just every year I'm doing it. This is just what I'm doing. And you know, I've even taken a step further. It's empowering because it's like, I'm gonna take on this beast, and I'm gonna tame this beast, and I'm gonna do some things to keep more money in my pocket. I call it forward tax planning because down the road now you're in a position where the threat of rising tax rates is either minimized or eliminated. It just doesn't get any better than that. So it's really important we start looking at taxes. They're integral to retirement planning, integral.
Obviously different for everyone depending on their personal situation. But when we talk about a 20, 30-year-long retirement from a dollars and cents standpoint, what could we be looking at in terms of potential savings here?
Well, that's the way you frame that, Mallory, is great, because when you talk 10, 20, 30 years, because that's really the way to look at it, right? Because if you think about it, I give away, I don't know if it's a giveaway, but I pay taxes every year. That's money, it's gone. That is gone. It's out of your account. It's never growing in your account for you. It's never going to be available for you for retirement. It's never going to grow. And this year after year after year, imagine if your tax bill, just using $10,000 a year, if I said you're going to have a contribution of $10,000 a year for the next 20 or 30 years to your retirement account, how much that would grow. And then if we can do it in a tax-free environment, even better. So when we use these, when you hear people say it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, we're not trying to be dramatic. It's just a fact. You run the numbers, it could be hundreds of thousands of dollars over your lifetime.
And you've seen it, and to me this goes back to the income piece. What happens when we're combining an income plan with tax strategies that could potentially be saving us this type of money over the course of our entire retirement?
It's hand in glove, because, you know, when you look at, you know, when we're taking money out of these accounts that are tax-free, it impacts other things. A lot of times people just say, okay, what's the tax rate? Okay, if it's 22%, it's 24%, whatever the tax rate is, those are rates today. I don't know what they'll be in the future, but it's more than that. How does it impact our Social Security? How does it impact our Medicare premiums? Now I have required minimum distributions. And oh, by the way, to the extent I don't pay the tax on it, my spouse and my children will pay the tax. And in some cases, your children are going to pay taxes on those retirement accounts at their highest earning years. Maybe give another 30 or 40% away. So there's a lot more to the picture than just one simple move. So sometimes people get an answer, it's like, I talked to my accountant, nothing against accountants. But my accountant said, you're gonna pay taxes on that Roth conversion. My answer in many cases after I looked at everything is, so what? Look at all the benefits, right? So anyway, those are things we really need to look at the big picture when we talk about this. But the biggest takeaway is how many of us are incorporating tax planning, and I would say forward tax planning, into our retirement plan.
Empowering information that retirees can take control of their tax planning and have their own plan instead of Uncle Sam's. And with that in mind, if you want to learn more about having the right tax plan for your retirement, Tom has a great offer for you. Right now, for the first 5 callers with a portfolio of $500,000 or greater, he's offering a complimentary retirement plan just for you. This will allow Tom and his team to sit down with you personally and provide you with a roadmap, analyzing where you are right now and then discuss your best steps to really get ready for a successful retirement. The number to call is 630-491-8558. Once again, that phone number, 630-491-8558.
We've all been there. The expenses in life we don't see coming can certainly throw us for a loop. Tom, my question being, how can we put ourselves in the best position possible in terms of expenses we don't see coming in our retirement years?
Yeah, Mallory, it comes back to one word again, planning. Planning, right? And so when we stress test your planner, we look at it, you know, one of those pieces of those 5 pillars we've talked about in the past, one of them is what I call asset protection. And that covers these unforeseen events. Now, they're not pleasant to talk about, but we've got to have the conversation, right? So, you know, if you're incapacitated, okay, well, your income stops. You're not contributing to your plan anymore. If you pass away, same thing. That creates this financial hardship. We talk about long-term care. If a spouse passes away, a Social Security is reduced. If you're retired or gone, one of them is, your pension can be reduced. Healthcare, there was a KFF, which is a healthcare analyst. They showed that healthcare went from $5,000 in early 2000 up to $25,000 for an average family. We're talking about these things that, you know, and then again, you add long-term care. If that doesn't cause some financial hardships, but again, if we incorporate those things in our plan, we can test for that, analyze it, and say, okay, what happens if? So this is where we look at those things like, you know, I pose the question, what is your life insurance coverage? I know sometimes we kind of put that to the side. We don't really look at it. What happens if there's a long-term illness? So if I start posing these questions, what's your answer going to be, and have you accounted for these in your plan? Because you can have the greatest income plan, you can have the greatest tax plan, you can have the greatest investment plan, but if one of these events comes along, boy, it can turn your plan upside down. And that's unfortunate.
At what point are you really having that conversation with your clients or people coming in for a second opinion? Because as you just stated, they're uncomfortable conversations. If I'm coming into your office, I'm going to say, Tom, show me how we're growing in the market.
Right,
show me how we're saving on
Hey.
taxes. Show me how many lobster tails I get to buy tonight. How do you really broach this conversation? Because you just said long-term care can be more expensive than taxes.
Yeah, it's a lot more fun to talk about the next hot stock
Yeah.
or what's going on, like you said, David. But it's just it's really from the first meeting.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
when I talk about what is my definition of a retirement plan, here it is, and I go through those: creating income you can't outlive, minimizing taxes, having a solid, smart investment plan. The fourth pillar is having an asset protection plan. You're an asset. What happens if you go away? What happens if there's a problem? And we address that. We have that conversation. And then I keep coming back with it. We do classes where we talk about it, or when I have review meetings. Okay, let's look again. Let's take a look at this. What have we done since we talked? Well, I haven't really looked at it. So, eventually, I usually use the technical term, I'm going to bug you to death until we
Which is
start
good.
to address it.
Yes.
So that's part of the
That's what you want.
process, period.
So let me ask you this then. When is the appropriate time, in your opinion, to bring grown children into the conversation?
That's a personal choice.
Yeah.
I always say, we do family meetings. And so, especially part of the estate planning, which is that fifth pillar, which
Yes.
we didn't get to. So that fifth pillar, the estate and legacy plan, your children want to fulfill your wishes. It's not always about the dollars and cents. In fact, I would say, and it's a true statement, it usually isn't about the dollars and cents. It's about fulfilling your wishes. So if you don't tell them what their wishes are, you've got 5 children sitting around a dinner table saying, what did mom and dad want? They don't know. I offer that. I think it's an opportunity for people that you should know what you have in place. Some people will say, and I don't push, some people will say, hey, look, I have this stuff in place, but it's not the time. I don't want to really address it. But I think personally, it is a good thing to involve them and kind of let them know. At a minimum, let them know what you have in place and let them know, hey, I put you as my trustee, my successor trustee. You're my power of attorney. This is where I keep stuff, right? That's still
Yes.
important, at a minimum.
Yes.
Right?
As you talk about all these things, it goes back to our earlier conversation about how you really need to avoid having a cookie cutter plan
Yes.
in retirement. The customized plan is potentially a much more successful approach. But as you're talking about all of these conversations and all of these moving pieces, it seems to me that you get to play both financial advisor and almost counselor, that this is helping people be prepared financially for retirement and mentally.
Yeah.
I would say, David, I like to say I'm your advocate. That's what I'm here for, right? And I want every part of your plan. That's why I talk about being complete. As I said, with taxes and income, we talked about that. Investments, all of these things relate. So if you can understand that, and understand how everything works and not have any of these, look, I'm not saying you're going to have the perfect plan. There may be some loose ends. But I owe it to my clients to say, here's what I think you should be looking at. And then we drill down into each one of those pieces. And so you're going to be as prepared as you can be. That's my goal. That's always my goal.
Tough conversations to have, but conversations that need to be had. Tom,
Absolutely.
thank you very much. And for you at home, if you want to learn more about planning for the unexpected, Tom has a great offer for you. Right now, for the first 5 callers with a portfolio of $500,000 or greater, he's offering a complimentary retirement plan just for you. This will allow Tom to sit down with you personally and provide you with a roadmap analyzing where you are right now and discuss your best steps to really get ready for a successful retirement. The number to call right now, 630-491-8558. Once again, that number, 630-491-8558.
Tom, I think one of the most interesting things that you've been talking about, the 5 pillars.
Right.
How do those 5 pillars, in your opinion, really help someone have a complete retirement plan?
Well, it's important because, if you ask a group of people, and we do classes, I'll say, can someone define a retirement plan for me? Someone will say, well, I'm trying to get to $1 million. Or I'm just investing as much as I can. I'm trying to grow this pot of money. Or I went out and bought a product. That's not a plan. And, I applaud them for making the effort, but unfortunately, we need to understand what means being complete. So I define a plan. I try to make it simple. There's 5 pillars. That's it. One is an income plan, the cornerstone of that pillar or those pillars. Having income you can't outlive. We know the stats That's the biggest fear, and it's the most, and of course it is. So you got to have income.
Yeah.
Income that lasts a lifetime. The second piece is, okay, how do I get more of that income tax-free? What is your tax planning piece of that plan? What are you doing to get to tax-free? Are you making Roth contributions? Are you doing conversions? Are you doing things where now you're not giving more money back to the government? And that higher tax rates are going to be a threat. The third piece is having a smart investment plan, a balanced investment plan, a strategic investment plan that you can stick with, and you're not have to emotional, and it's not volatile. The fourth piece is, now how do I protect the pot? That asset protection plan, that proverbial moat around the castle. And then fifth is my estate and legacy plan. How do I make sure I have the right documents in place to control the assets during my lifetime and make sure they go to my loved ones in the most tax efficient and most effective manner? That's it, 5 pieces. It's almost like a punch list. I can start checking the box, right?
Yeah.
That's it. And now I can sit back and say I'm complete.
How often do you have an individual or a couple that walk into your office for a second opinion?
Yeah.
They think those 5 pillars are intact, but in reality, one is kind of crumbling.
Yeah, it's not uncommon, because it's a lot. There's a lot of stuff going on. You can't. It's very difficult to have expertise in estate planning, have expertise in the tax code, have and a lot of times, here's what happens is they may have an accountant and they may have an attorney and they may have maybe a financial advisor, whatever it may be. No one's talking.
Yeah.
And so you got to have someone, this is my belief, you have to have someone kind of at the head of the table who's the quarterback, who's the coach, who's taking over and looking and tying all these things together. We do everything. We have an attorney that does the estate planning. We do, we have someone who does the accounting. We do all of this stuff, but we all work together and we're all communicating.
Yeah.
So the plan is working together.
Very beneficial to have it all under one roof. I'm also curious, someone comes in with a hefty 401k, IRA. These statements don't make that plan.
No, they don't, because, well, first of all, if I look at a statement, you mentioned the 401k, one of the things right off the top is, I'm sorry, but that's not all your money, right?
It's true.
You got to take a haircut, 20, 30% may be gone. So you need to be aware of those things. That's one of the things right off the start when we talk about, okay, what are you doing from a tax standpoint? But, as I said, you can have multiple statements, but again, it's just that old adage of I'm just trying to grow this pot of money. I'm trying to get to a number. But how are you going to, if I say you got $1 million in your 401k and I pose the question, I say, what is the guaranteed amount of income you can pull off this account for the rest of your life? What's the answer? Well, there isn't one. Okay, so now we have to start, that starts the conversation on how do I create that? What about the tax liability? Well, I'm not sure. So now we can start piecing these things together, and now we start creating that plan.
Tom, with this and everything else we talked about today in mind, you have something for our viewers at home.
I do, Mallory. For the first 5 callers with $500,000 or more in investable assets, we will sit down with you and put together a complete complimentary retirement plan. I call it your retirement roadmap.
A very generous offer. Thank you, Tom. A great time for those watching to take action. So right now, for you at home, if you want to learn more about having the right strategies for your retirement, Tom has a great offer for you. Right now, for the first 5 callers with a portfolio of $500,000 or greater, he's offering a complimentary retirement plan just for you.
This will allow Tom to sit down with you personally and provide you with a roadmap analyzing where you are right now and discuss your best steps to really get ready for a successful retirement. The number to call right now, 630-491-8558.